Hi there, I'm Jackie Perkins, and I'd love to welcome you to the third in my leadership series, Prioritize for Purpose. So, what does this actually mean? I want you to think about what does a lack of priorities look like in your work life and in your personal life. Have a think about that. If you go to work each day and you're not sure what to prioritize on, what does that look like for you? What does that feel like for you? At the end of the day, what does it feel like for you? If you have a lack of priorities in your personal life, how is that impacting your family, yourself? Have a think about that. Now, while you're mulling that over, I'm going to ask you a question. What is the definition of success? So pretend that you've just met a Japanese student who's come to work in Australia and they're learning the English language, and they say to you, I've heard this word success. What does it actually mean? And you now need to give them a definition of success. What would you tell them? So my definition of success is the ongoing realization of your predetermined goals. So maybe my predetermined goal is that by the age of 60, I'll be driving a red Maserati. If I do that, I've been successful. Maybe it's I want to raise 3 drug-free children. If I do that, I've been successful. Or maybe it's I want to eradicate world hunger. Or what about a cure for coronavirus? That could be a mighty goal. I would have been successful. So it doesn't matter how big or lofty the goal is. It's a predetermined goal. And if you achieve it, you've been successful. So when it comes to prioritizing for purpose, we really want to understand whether what we're focusing on is actually going to lead us to our predetermined goals. Now, what if we're working for another organization? How do we ensure we're successful within that organization? Do we really understand the long-term goals of our team, the long-term goals of our business, the long-term goals of our industry? So on this slide, you will see there's a very strong connection between your individual KPIs, which are aligned to the goals of your department or your work area, which are aligned to the organizational goals, which are aligned to the overall organizational mission and purpose. So is there a very clear understanding for you around what you do and what the business is trying to achieve? So let me ask you a question. What percentage of the time is a space shuttle ship off course on its way to the moon? What percentage of the time is a space shuttle ship, say that when you've had too many wines, off course on its way to the moon? So apparently it's 93% of the time, but it still gets there. So why does it still get there? Because it's got an internal GPS system that is navigating, and it keeps redirecting. Now, if we don't understand what the team goals are, the organizational goals are, how do we keep on redirecting ourselves? How do people in our team keep on redirecting themselves? So if we want to take accountability and ownership for our success, we need to understand what is the big picture for the team, the big picture for the organization, so we can be proactive and work towards it. Are we sharing this with our team members so they can be proactive and work towards it instead of us micromanaging them? So remember, we don't want to just develop doers. We want to develop some critical thinkers. And critical thinkers understand the long-term business goals and objectives, and they know how to work towards them. So a tool that is really going to help you with this is called a job clarification summary. So on my website, I have developed a whole plethora of coaching tools for you, which you'll be able to access, and they are aligned to each of these leadership series. So this coaching tool is called a job clarification summary. And what it does is it gets you to identify what is the overall purpose of your job. Why does your job exist? What would happen if your job didn't exist? What would be the impact to the business if your job didn't exist? So a really good way to work this out is to pretend that your CEO has just walked in and said, "Hey team, I'm really sorry to say this to you, but we're going to have to downsize the business by 20%. which means 20% of the roles have to go, not 20% of the people. 20% of the roles have to go. So it's got nothing to do with how hardworking you are, how educated you are, how beautiful you are. It's whether that role adds value to the business. And the CEO then says, you've got 5 minutes to do a presentation on why your role should stay. Now, I'd like you to answer that question because that's going to help you really think about the purpose of your role. What are you actually paid to do? That's going to help you on your mission towards the moon and not get derailed. The next step, you're going to look at what are the 4 to 6 key areas that I need to focus on to be successful in this role. So instead of a job description or a position description with a whole long list of tasks and activities, we really want to look at the key areas that we want to focus on. So one could be business development. Another one could be customer engagement. Another one could be mentoring, coaching, and professional development. Another one could be documentation. Another one could be performance management or recruitment. And then you would want to weight those 6 areas out of 100%. So one you might give 10%, another you might give 30%. And then I'd like you to share that with your manager and see if your manager has the same understanding as you. I'd like you to get everyone in your team to complete it, and then I'd like you to complete it for your team and then compare. Does your team have the same understanding of their role as you have? And are they weighting their time, effort, and energy to the same degree as you are? So I'm going to give you an example. What if I just employed a sales accountant, and the major reason I'd employed them was to bring in new business? And I said, go away and write down the 4 to 6 key areas that you believe you should be focusing on. And they came back and put client management, 60%, new business development, 10%. I'd be going, no, sorry, there's a big misunderstanding here. The major reason you've been employed is for new business development. I want your new business development to be 60, 70%. And customer management and customer satisfaction, 30%, 40%. And when I dig down into it, I find out that this person actually hates new business development. They're nervous of it, which is why they made it so small. So we really need to make sure, are we on the same page as to what's important? And are we putting enough time and energy into those key areas? And the last little step on there is what activities you're going to do in alignment with those 4 to 6 key areas. All I want you to do at this point is to always discipline yourself to ask this question. Before you jump into the whirlwind, ask yourself, is this the best use of my time right now? Is this activity aligned to my 4 to 6 key areas? Is it aligned to what we're trying to produce as a team, as a business? If not, why am I doing it? So that's the first little tool that I think you will find really helpful. The next thing I want us to think about is actually understanding the impact of having an aligned business with aligned teams and the impact of not having that in place. And to do that, I'm going to read a little extract from Stephen Covey's book called The 8th Habit. And this analogy that he uses really gives you a brilliant insight into why our teams need to have the understanding of where their team fits within the business and where their job fits within the business. So Stephen Covey talks about a Harris questionnaire that was sent out to 23,000 US residents that were employed full-time across key industries within key functional areas. And these were the outcomes of this questionnaire. Only 37% of the people interviewed said they had a clear understanding of what their organization is trying to achieve and why. So less than a third understood why their business is in business and what it's trying to achieve. Only 1 in 5 was enthusiastic about their team or organizational goals. So what kind of productivity are you going to see when people aren't enthusiastic about their team's goals? Only 1 in 5 workers said they had a clear line of sight between their job and their organizational goals. So they come to work, they do a job, but they haven't got a cooking clue how that's impacting the business's success. How demotivating is that? Only half were satisfied with the work they'd accomplished at the end of the week. Well, that's a no-brainer. Only 15% felt they worked in a high trust environment, and only 17% felt their organizations fostered open communication of different opinions. Well, if we're not developing critical thinkers, we're not going to be getting new opinions. Now, I want you to look at these stats in line with a soccer game. So, if, say, a soccer team had these same scores, only 4 of the 11 players on the field would know which goal is theirs. Only 2 of the 11 would care. Only 2 of the 11 would know what position they play and know exactly what they're supposed to do. And all but 2 players would be in some way be competing against their own team members rather than the opponent. Quite shocking, isn't it? And it all comes back to not having a direct line of sight between their role, their team's objectives, and what the organization is trying to achieve. So that job clarification summary is a powerful tool to make sure that everyone in your team, including yourself, is in alignment with what the organization is trying to achieve. So Stephen Covey talks about stepping into the whirlwind. So I want you to think about that. We get to work and we go, oh my God, I've got 100,000 emails in my inbox. I've got 20,000 messages in my voice bank. I've got my clients that are asking for things. My boss is at my door wanting something. I've got 3 members of my team asking for my help. And I go, and I just step into this whirlwind. And I get home from work at the end of the day and I go, oh my God, I've had such a heavy day. I've had such a busy day. I deserve at least half a bottle of wine. But let me just check and see how productive I've been, how successful I've been. So I pick up my compass and I go, all right, let me see if I've been heading towards the moon. And I look and I go, holy moly, I haven't been heading south. I haven't been heading north. I've been heading frigging south the whole day. I've put all this time, effort, and energy to go in the exact wrong direction. Because what I've been doing is reacting to whoever needs me, to all these voicemails, emails, meetings, instead of stepping back and going, hang on a sec, before I just accept yes to that meeting, before I just say yes to that colleague, have you got 5 minutes, before I just answer that email, before I just take that phone call, have I stopped, have I paused and said, Jackie, is this the best use of my time right now? Does it align with my 4 to 6 key areas? Is this going to take me where I need to go? Or am I just going around in circles, being busy but not productive? So make that a habit. Always ask, is this the best use of my time right now? So here's a question for you. The difference between effective and efficient. Have a think about it. Write down a little sentence. What is effective? What is efficient? If you need to pause and do it, then do so and then come back and have a listen. So I'm going to use Stephen Covey's definition here. Effectiveness is doing the right thing. Efficient is doing it in the right way. So now there's no point doing something efficiently if you are working on the wrong thing. So maybe you've devised the best way to run the most efficient marathon ever, but the destination was Melbourne and you went to Sydney. Pointless. So what is the right thing effective? Am I working on the right stuff? Am I working on the stuff that's going to deliver the goods in terms of where my team and the business is going? Number 1, that's what we have to identify. And only then can we move to how do we do this efficiently? So now let's talk about how do we do it efficiently. So I'm going to make a bit of a bold confrontational statement. What makes successful people successful? Every single person is born with different amounts of talent. Some people are born with way more academic aptitude than others. Some people are born with way more sporting talent than others. Some people are born with way more musical talent than others. Some people are born with just way better looks than others. Some people just have the ability to sing or dance or act far better than anyone else. But here's the leveler. As far as I know, not one baby popped out of their mother's tummy with 25 hours in a day or 26 hours in a day. Every single one of us was given 24 hours in a day. This is the great leveler. It's what we choose to do with our 24 hours in a day that separates the successful from the unsuccessful people. Not your talents, not the upper hand, but what we do with our time. Are we productive or are we simply busy? Do we really know what we're working towards, and have we put the steps in place to achieve it? So let's audit where our time is going, because remember, you can't fix what's not broken. And you can only fix it if you know what's broken. So let's do a quick little audit of where our time is going. In the coaching tools, you will find two little templates that are going to be immeasurably helpful to you. One is called the Daily Time Log. Now, the Daily Time Log helps you track your time. It's quite simple. You write in what task you were working on, when you started, when you finished. But here's the thing I really want you to focus on. If it was a scheduled task, meaning you planned to do it, you'll put a plus in the column. If it was an unscheduled task, meaning someone jumped in and interrupted you, or the phone rang, or you answered an email that popped in, or you were suddenly called to a meeting, it gets a minus. The second thing you're going to describe, was this job highly important, meaning it aligned with your 4 to 6 key areas, so it gets an H, or was it low importance where it didn't align to your 4 to 6 key areas, so it gets an L. And by the end of the day, you'll have a picture of a whole string of minuses and pluses and a whole string of highs and lows. And when you look at it, you want to do a bit of a self-assessment and say, wow, 80% of my day were minuses. So what does that mean? I've been reacting 80% of the day. 80% of my day has been dictated by other people. Phone calls, meetings, interruptions, emails. Now, if you're at a front of house reception, then that's your job. It should be 80% reactive. But if you're sitting as a training manager or an HR manager, well, 80% of your day should be pluses, proactive, strategic, not just interruptions and reactive work. So something's wrong. We need to address it. The same with the high and the low. If you see that there's a good 40, 50% of L's there instead of H's, we have to ask the question, why am I doing these low important stuff instead of the high important stuff? Is it easier? Quicker? Do I enjoy them more? Are the higher important stuff more complicated? I don't have the resources. I don't understand them. Really do a bit of self-awareness here as to what is distracting you from doing the higher important stuff rather than getting stuck with low important stuff, because we're not going to achieve what we set out to achieve if we go down that rabbit hole. So that's the first little tool. The second little tool is my most favorite tool in the whole world. It is the interruption log. Now, did you know that we lose up to 2 hours a day in interruptions? This is according to Brian Tracy, and if you look at my favorite resources on my website, you will see that he's included there. He has done research across the world, across multiple industries, across multiple workforces, where he has figured out that the average employee will work for 56 minutes before they get an interruption. They will have up to 56 interruptions a day. Every 3 minutes, they could have someone else coming up and interrupting them, meaning overall 2 hours a day are lost in interruptions. And the sad thing about it is that 50% of those 2 hours are unimportant interruptions, which means if we could mitigate those, we could claim a whole hour back. What would you do with that hour? I really want you to think about that. If you could get an hour back in your day at work, what would you do with that hour? All those things you've been meaning to do, but always saying, I don't have time, I don't have time. So with the interruption log, you're going to write down the person that interrupted you, how long they interrupted you for, and then the description. And there are 4 types of interruptions. A meeting you were suddenly called into, a phone that rang and you answered, an email that popped up in your email popper-upper, or a drop-in visitor, which is, hey, Jackie, have you got 5 minutes? Those are all interruptions. And then you're going to qualify it as an A. A is highly important. B is just important. C is not important. And D is waste of time. Once you've done that, you can go back and go, well, where is my time going? Is it going to meetings? Is it going in emails? Is it going on phone calls? Is it people coming up to my desk? And who are my serial interrupters? And once you know that, you can start putting some strategies in place to minimize it and get your 1 hour back. So remember this, up to 50% of your interruptions are C's and D's, low importance and waste of time. What can we do to mitigate this? So I want to share a little story with you that I'm hoping is going to help you feel a little bit more comfortable about protecting your time. So let's say a colleague of yours comes up to you and says, hey, Jackie, could I please borrow $2,000? You know, times are tough at the moment. Would you do 1? Sure, Jackie, no problem. Here you go. Or would you do 2? I just want to go home, discuss it with my family, look at our financial situation, look at our bank balances, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. Is that okay? More than likely, you would do 2. But let's say your colleague comes up and says, hey, Jackie, have you got 5 minutes? Are you going to do 1 and go, sure, no problem, knowing that that 5 minutes is going to turn into 25 minutes? Or 2, can I look at my calendar, look at what I've planned for the day, and then I'll get back to you and see if I can fit that in? More than likely, you do 1. Now, here's the question. Why do we do this when I cannot get that time back? I can get the $2,000 back. I can go in a month's time and say, you know, you borrowed $2,000. I really need it back now. I may need to break their legs, but I can get it back. The thing is, let's say it comes to 5 o'clock and I've promised myself now, my new regime is 5 o'clock, I'm going to go to yoga, or I'm going to make sure I'm at home to read to my kid before they go to bed, or I'm going to go see my mom, whatever it is. But it's now 5 o'clock and that 5 minute that my colleague asked for turned into 45 minutes and I'm now stuck at work trying to finish off what I had to finish off. I can't leave at 5 o'clock and I can't go to my colleague and say, you know that 45 minutes you stole from me this morning, I need it back. It's gone. So my question to you is this. Why do we treat something like our time, that is our most precious commodity, with such loose parameters? And yet we really consider when someone asks to borrow our car or to borrow money, we think about it. Next time someone asks for your time, think about it. Is it the best use of your time? So here's a question for you. I want you to think about what is the difference between urgent and important. Urgent and important. What is the definition of each? Now I'm going to use the definition Stephen Covey uses. Important is something that has to be done. It's part of your 4 to 6 key areas of your role. It is a non-negotiable. It might not have an immediate time frame, but it is a non-negotiable. Urgent is something screaming in your face for attention, not necessarily important. So some emails, ping, 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 I open it and it's just someone sending me some pictures. Phone ringing, oh, I've got to answer it, and it's someone saying, oh, could you please bring home some groceries for dinner tonight? Drop-in visitor, oh, can I have 5 minutes of your time, Jackie? I just wanted to show you the photos of our wedding last weekend. Or it could be, oh, Jackie, could you get into this meeting? It's urgent. And I get there and I find that only 5 minutes of it pertains to me and I'm stuck there for 2 hours. So urgent does not mean important. Urgent simply means it's demanding attention. And that is the trick, to only respond to urgent and important or just important. We do not want to be responding to the urgent, non-important stuff. Because what's happening then is someone else has got the strings and is the puppeteer. And their agenda becomes your agenda. And instead of you being in control of the puppeteer strings and deciding what you're doing with your time, you're letting someone else decide what to do with your time. Hence, you go home at the end of the day and say, I've had a day from hell, I've worked 10 hours, and I've picked up my compass and gone, hell's bells. I haven't been heading north, I've been heading frigging south all day. So how are we going to prevent this? So come with me and we are going to have a look at the best tool that was ever invented, which is the priority matrix designed by Stephen Covey. The best, most magical tool I've ever come across when it comes to priority management is Stephen Covey's priority matrix. I'm going to unpack it very quickly, very simply, very briefly. You can get so much more out of it if you go read his book. What I'm going to do is use generic language, and then I'm really going to rely on you to actually take it back into specific examples from your workplace. So, number one, these top 2 quadrants are important, highly important. So any work done in quadrant 1 or quadrant 2 would have an H next to them. So if you go back to your time log, if you're working in these 2 quadrants, it will get an H. So these 2 quadrants mean we are working towards north. We're on the way to our true north. We're heading in the right direction. So in the perfect world, your entire job should be able to split between those 2 quadrants. Now, when we work in these 2 quadrants, they're low important. So these 2 quadrants are taking us south. They're taking us away from where we want to head. So in the perfect world, we want to stay out of these 2 quadrants. Now we know there's proactive and reactive stuff. Some jobs require more reactive stuff. But even in the jobs that don't require reactive stuff, we might find ourselves reacting more than we should. So when we're in these 2 quadrants, these are the reactive quadrants. So it's unscheduled work. It is reactive work, or as Stephen Covey refers to it, it is urgent. Remember, urgent is just calling for your attention, not necessarily important. So if it's in quadrant 1, it is important and it's urgent. But if it's in quadrant 3, it's urgent, but it's not important. It's low importance. Now, these 2 quadrants are your proactive quadrants. They are scheduled tasks. They are proactive and not urgent, meaning they're not screaming for attention, but they are important. So we need to make sure that we are spending a great deal of time in this quadrant because it's important, but not necessarily in this quadrant. So again, going back to my north-south, I'm going to put an east here and a west here. Never eat silkworms. So we want to be focusing our jobs here and not here. So let's really look at what kind of jobs are going to fall into these categories. Quadrant 1, important and urgent. So I'm going to suggest any customer complaint is going to be urgent and important. I'm also going to suggest that non-delivery of services or product is urgent and important. So we didn't deliver the product when we said we would. The carer didn't arrive when we said the carer would arrive. The building material didn't arrive when we said it would arrive. The proposal didn't arrive when we said it would arrive. Non-delivery of product or services is urgent and important. I'm then also going to use this word breakdown. Any type of breakdown. It could be an IT breakdown. It could be equipment failure. That is urgent and important. It needs to be dealt with immediately. Lack of resources. Now, what I mean by this being urgent and important is on the day we suddenly realize so-and-so phoned in sick and we need them to do a job. So we had the lack of staff on that day. Or maybe a piece of equipment that we needed wasn't there, that we needed to do the job. So that's urgent and important. What is also important and urgent is we may have a staff, how can I say this correctly? I'm inclined to just say staff stuff up, meaning a staff makes an error, makes a mistake. I'm going to put staff error, staff mistake. So what I mean by that is one of the team members actually does something wrong and it needs to be addressed immediately. It needs to be fixed immediately. Or it could be that we actually have not only a breakdown, but that we have poor quality delivery of services. So it's not that the service wasn't delivered, it was a poor quality delivery. So we have a quality issue and we've got a very unhappy customer. So all of these are sitting in the quadrant of crisis. This is the quadrant of crisis. They're important and they are urgent. Now, quadrant 2 is important but not urgent, meaning it can be planned for and it can be scheduled. So things like customer service, ongoing customer service, business development, ongoing business development to get new clients, networking. It could be things like coaching, training. It could be things like budgets. It could be compliance and procedures that need to be developed. It will definitely be planning. It will definitely be scheduling. Maintenance. Very importantly, recruitment, succession planning, customer relationships, team building. Now, what I want you to do, this is the quadrant of balance, the quadrant of balance. I want you to have a look and see what is the relationship between quadrant 2 and quadrant 1. And I'm hoping that what you will see is that for everything in quadrant 2, there's a very sick cousin in quadrant 1. So if I don't do maintenance, I have breakdown of equipment or software. If I don't do recruitment, I have a lack of resources. I don't have enough staff. If I don't do customer relationship building, I have unhappy customers or customers complaining. If I don't do scheduling and planning, I have non-delivery of services and products. Oh, so what's also got to go in here is we need quality and assurance to make sure high quality is being delivered. So for everything in this quadrant, if we don't do it, it will land up as a crisis in quadrant 1. Now, here's the thing. This is where the self-awareness comes into it. We have got to be very aware of what stories we're telling ourselves about why something became a crisis. So I'm going to give you a very simple story that will help you. On the evening of my birthday each year, my husband will say, "Oh my God, it's your birthday tomorrow. Oh, I haven't got you anything. I just haven't had time. I've been so busy. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to sort something out." And I answer with, you see, the strange thing is my birthday falls on the same date every year. I know I'm unique, but I'm one of these rare people that has a birthday on the same day each year, which means as of today, you have 365 days to start planning what you're going to buy me. So why I'm sharing this story with you is, if there's something that lands up here, was it genuinely a crisis that just jumped out of nowhere? Or was it something you knew about for months, for weeks, that you just put off until it became a crisis? So let's go here, quadrant 3. Quadrant 3 is known as the quadrant of deception. Quadrant of deception. Now I'm just going to preface it by saying anything I put here, I'm just going to put the word some. So it is some meetings. It is some emails. It is some phone calls. It is some drop-in visitors. So in other words, all your interrupters. So all your interrupters are quadrant 3. Now, why are we calling it the quadrant of deception? Because you could spend your entire day here answering phone calls, answering emails, going to meetings, dealing with drop-in visitors, and come up for air at the end of the day and pick up your compass and go, I haven't been heading north, I've been heading frigging south all day. But I felt so busy. But I wasn't productive. I was busy, not productive. So this is where we want to ask ourselves the question, do I, circle the I, need to do this now? Circle the now. Do I need to do this now? Because sometimes it could be someone else who could be doing it, or I don't have to drop everything to do this right now. Perhaps it can wait. So I'm going to introduce you to the dance, the waltz. So here's the waltz. I decide I'm going to be a very good girl, and I'm actually going to put 2 hours aside to work on my recruitment strategy. And I'm plugging away at it like a really, really good girl, and the phone rings. So I answer the phone, and it's someone who actually wants to talk to me about a process they're finding very challenging and how frustrated they are with this new CRM system. And I can do nothing to help them. It's not my responsibility, but they just wanted a good vent. And by the time I get off the phone, I'm now lost interest in my recruitment strategy. I don't feel like working on it anymore. And so I think, well, I'll just go to the kitchen and I'll get myself a coffee. And while I'm having a coffee, a real genuine crisis emerges with a very unhappy customer. And so the waltz begins. 1, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. And what happens to quadrant 2? Well, quadrant 2 gets neglected. It gets ignored until it becomes a crisis. And then we find ourselves trapped permanently in this quadrant of crisis and never getting to quadrant 2. So what we want to say to ourselves is simply 2 things. How do I maximize my time in quadrant 2? And how do I minimize my time in quadrant 3? So if you watch Stephen Covey's YouTube clip, which I will include in my resources on my website for you, Rocks, Pebbles, Sand, he talks about a container representing 24 hours in a day. You've got a pile of rocks, you've got a pile of pebbles, and you've got a pile of sand. You need to get the rocks, the pebbles, and the sand into this container, which represents 24 hours. Now, if you pour the sand in first, then the pebbles, you will find there's not enough room for the rocks. But if you put the rocks in first, then you pour the pebbles in, they filter in amongst the rocks, and then you pour the sand in, there's actually enough space. So which quadrants are which? Quadrant 2 are your rocks. Quadrant 1 are your pebbles. And quadrant 3 is your sand. So what I want to say to you is, how are you going to plan your day to ensure you do your rocks first? Put them into your calendar, daily, weekly, monthly, get your rocks done first. How are you going to manage your interruptions so that you're not mucking about in the sandpit all day? And as a leader, start using this language with your teams. Hey, what are your rocks for the day? What are your rocks for the week? What are your rocks for the month? Get out of the frigging sand. Stop playing with the sand. Get back up here into quadrant 2 and get your rocks done so that they don't land up as a crisis. Here is the most interesting statistic. When we go from quadrant 2, we are in strategic thinking. When we are interrupted, we are taken to quadrant 3 and we go into tactical thinking. And it takes us up to 25 minutes to get back into strategic thinking, which means we don't just lose the time that we spent on that phone call or that email, but the 25 minutes trying to get back into strategic thinking, which is why we go, oh, hang it, I'll just go get a coffee. And then another crisis has emerged and we never get back to our rocks. So the trick is we have to mitigate these interruptions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very, very quickly and briefly give you a couple of techniques to maximize your time in quadrant 2 and minimize your time in quadrant 3. So what we want to do is make sure that we are maximizing our time here in quadrant 2. We need to minimize our time in quadrant 3. We do not need to worry about quadrant 1 because it is important. And it's going to take care of itself because it's urgent and it's screaming for attention. So what are we going to do here? Number 1, you want to apply your 80-20 rule. So what is the 80-20 rule? The 80-20 rule was devised by an Italian economist by the name of Vilfredo Pareto, who said that you get 80% of the value from the 20% of the input, time, money spent. So a simple way to look at it is if I've got a client base with 100 clients on it, 80% of my revenue is going to come from 20% of those clients, from 20 of those clients. So if I'm smart, I'm not going to spend my time across all my clients with the same level of effort and energy. I'm going to put 80% of my energy into the 20% that generate the best revenue for me. We've also got the stat that 20% of our staff will produce 80% of our productivity. 20% of our staff will cause 80% of our problems. So we want to be thinking about what is the 20% that I want to actually prioritize. What rocks do I need to be working on to ensure that I get best maximum output? We all know that we're going to go home at the end of the day without having finished everything that was on our plate. So get comfortable with the fact that you go home not having completed everything, but at least you completed the important stuff. So a very simple way to think about this is if you've got a to-do list with 10 things on it, you then identify the top 2 things, the 20% that were the most important, and you only got those 2 things done, but they were the most important 20%, you would have in fact been 80% effective. So it's not how much you get done, it's what you choose to work on. Use your 80-20 rule. The second thing I want you to apply is your prime time. I want you to sit down and think about the times of the day when you are at your most mentally alert, when you focus the best, when you're the most agile. We all know those slumps in the day where we just want to put our head down, or those times when we've gone to the gym and we just go, oh, I can't do this. I can't focus. I can't concentrate. But we also know those times where it just happens and we're in the zone and it just goes. Those are our prime times. So if you jot down the hours that you wake up from, say 6 in the morning, to the hour you go to bed, say 10 p.m., and you map out some coordinates in terms of what your energy levels are, you can then work out where your prime time is. So you'll see from the PowerPoint slide that is up on the screen that we can identify our peak time by mapping our alertness to the time of the day. Now, what do we want to do with this prime time? I'm going to share a little story with you. So many moons ago, I used to manage a recruitment consultancy in Johannesburg. And we knew in order to hit our sales targets for the month, we would have to phone, every single recruitment consultant would have to phone 20 new clients a day to see if they'd be willing to do business with us and to give a job vacancy to us to complete. At the end of every day, I'd go around and ask each of my consultants, how many new clients did you manage to call today? And I'd get, maybe 5, maybe 8. And I'd say, why? Why not 20? What do you think the standard answer was? You're right. I didn't have time. Well, what were you busy doing that you didn't have time? I was putting together a job resume for one of my candidates. Is that their job? Yes. I was busy advertising that job. Is that their job? Yes. I was busy interviewing candidates for one of the jobs for my clients. Is that their job? Yes. My point is, all of that was their job. But the most important part of their job was phoning for new business. Because if we didn't bring in new clients, we wouldn't have jobs to fill. There would be no resumes to write. There would be no candidates to interview. There would be no adverts to put out there. The most important thing was to get the business so that we could fulfill the vacancies. This is what we need to be understanding. Priorities is what is the most important job. Am I doing what matters most? And of course, that begs the question, why weren't you doing it? Because they couldn't get into a rhythm. They'd be sitting here saying, right, let me pick up the phone and phone some new clients. And then they'd get an interruption, a phone call, an email, a meeting. It would take them out of the momentum of phoning. And then by the time they came up for air, they'd lost interest and they went and got a coffee. So what did we do? We got everyone to sit down and work out when their prime time was. And we discovered that everyone had a common prime time between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. So we made a commitment. We would not interrupt each other between 9 and 11. We would not phone each other, email each other, call for meetings between 9 and 11, pop into each other's offices. We would dedicate 9 to 11 purely for phoning new clients. And suddenly, voila, you guessed it, we made the 20 calls a day. Now, if you're in a huge open plan office, you can be doing something similar. You let your team know that when my little flag is up on my divider, I'm in my prime time. When it comes down, I'm out of my prime time. During that time, I'm going to be working on my rocks. I'm not going to be answering the phone, answering emails, jumping up if you come to my desk. Maybe it's 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon. You decide what period of time you can put away uninterrupted. But if you don't, you're never going to get the rocks done at work. You're going to end up doing the rocks at home, at night, and on the weekend. And remember, this is what you're paid to do. You're not paid to do this. You're paid to do this. So another strategy is to take those big rocks and say, well, that's all very well, Jackie, but some of my rocks I can't do in an hour. Some of my rocks are going to take 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours. Take the big rock, break it down into 1 hour chunks, break it down into 30-minute chunks, and schedule it into your calendar and put prime time working on a rock project so that everyone can see it. So they don't look at your calendar and go, oh, Jackie's free, we can book her into a meeting. No, I've got a rock project going. That's my prime time. It's sacred. And blank it out into your calendar for 3 months, 4 months, whatever it takes until that project is finished. Remember, if you don't protect your time, if you don't fill in your time, someone else will fill it in for you. And you will then be completing everyone else's agenda instead of your agenda. So when it comes to your performance review, you've been measured against your performance, not someone else's performance. And if you've given all your time away to everyone else, no one cares when it comes to your performance review, because it's only about whether you've delivered on your KPIs. So if you're a leader of a team, I would really encourage you to sit down with your team and say, well, what jobs belong in your quadrant 2? What are your rocks? What are your plans to maximize your time here? How are you going to schedule it into your calendar? How are you going to block out prime time? How are you going to apply your 80-20 rule? And the final little technique here is eat the frog. So you will see on my PowerPoints, there's a great little video clip called Eat the Frog. I will happily send these PowerPoints to you if you email me. I'll also put it in my favorite resources for you so that you can go and have a look at it. But the analogy of the eat the frog is, if it's the worst thing you had to do all day is eat a live frog, why don't you just do it first thing in the morning? And that's a famous little quote from Mark Twain. So I want you to imagine you've got this little frog croaking, croaking, croaking. This is a rock that needs to be done and you don't feel like doing it, and it's just croaking, 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 and you're running around doing everything but this rock. Instead of just sitting, listening to it in your ear, driving you frigging insane, I want you just to turn around and go, oh, silence, golden, weight off my shoulders. Now I can focus on everything else that I need to do. So you start off every day and say, right, what are my rocks for the day, the week, the month? What is my frog? Eat that first. And with your team, start using that language. What's your frog? Have you eaten it? Maybe even go and buy yourself some little Freddo frogs. Put them on your desk, and you're not allowed to go home until that Freddo frog has been eaten or given away. So what are your rocks? Get out of the sandpit and eat your frog. So quadrant number 3, I want us just to go back to that little story that your time is your most valuable commodity. So if your time has been taken up in meetings, emails, and phone calls that is not delivering on why you were employed, we need to be a little bit assertive here. And part of that is communicating your prime time, saying, guys, I'm available, happy to help. During my prime time, I'm going to protect it. I'm not going to answer emails during my prime time. I'm not going to take phone calls during my prime time, but I will reply to all emails or phone calls after 11 a.m. or whatever it may be. The world will not end. So really think about how you can instigate your prime time, communicate it to your team members, guard it jealously so your whole day is not being spent on interruptions. Look at your interruption log, figure out who's interrupting you, when and why, and ask yourself what you can do to minimize that, what you can do to communicate your need to protect your time. And could they come to you once with 10 questions instead of 10 times with 10 questions? So pulling this all together, I'm going to suggest that you set up times for your emails, maybe first thing in the morning, lunchtime, evening. Block out time to answer your phone calls. Block out your prime time where you don't take phone calls or emails or meetings so you can really do your rocks. And just take charge of where your time goes. Start being more proactive, more planned. Here's a little statistic for you. Brian Tracy said for every 10 minutes we spend planning, we shave an hour off the execution. So if we had to spend 20 minutes at the beginning of the day planning our day, that's 2 hours off the execution. If we can minimize our C and D interruptions, we can grab a whole hour back. So think about what you can do with that hour, all the stuff you never get to. So I've got some little coaching questions I'd like to ask you. What is the overall purpose of your role? Why does your role exist? Really think about that. How does it align to the strategic direction of the business? Ask yourself, what is important, not just urgent? So not just screaming for attention. Is it actually important? How much time are you spending in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2? So in the ideal world, you would split your whole job across these 2 quadrants. But maybe in the perfect world, your job should be 20% quadrant 1 and 80% quadrant 2. But when you look at it in reality, it's actually 80% quadrant 1 and 20% quadrant 2, which means you feel like you're constantly living in a quadrant of crisis. How can you shift that? How can you shift more to quadrant 2? How can you get your rocks done first? What can you do to minimize your time in the sandpit? What is your frog today? What are you going to do to make sure you eat that frog today? And who are your serial interrupters? And are they interrupting you via face-to-face or email or phone call? And what are you going to do to minimize those interruptions? Because remember, your time is your most precious commodity. Once you've given it away, you can't get it back. So I'd love you to have a look at the supporting tools that I've made available to you. There are coaching tools with the time log, the interruption log, a number of other resources under my favorite resources. If you'd like the slides, please email me. Or if you'd like some one-on-one coaching or group coaching on a virtual platform to help you with these particular rituals, these particular techniques for your situation, I'd love to hear from you. Please give me a call. You know what to do. Until next time, be bold, be curious.